It's been 5 weeks since my miscarriage, and I think I can finally talk about this without falling apart, so I'm gonna try. And I know I don't have to, but I think it'll help me process. And I also think maybe someone out there can benefit from this, because prior to having my miscarriage, I had no idea how prevalent it was, that it's 1 in 5, that it's 20 to 25%. And I had never heard any stories, anybody talk about it openly, so I had no way to sympathize with anybody going through this. And I wish I did. So I'm going to share my experience of it. Growing up, I was a very strong, independent, and active young woman, and I never wanted kids. In fact, on one of my first dates with my now husband, I said, I don't know if this is a deal breaker, but I don't want kids. And he just smiled. He thought I just wasn't ready, and luckily for him, he was right, because when I turned 30, I woke up, I turned to him, and I was like, why don't we have kids yet? Whose idea was this? It was an awful idea. We need kids stat. So something in me, biology or that maternal instinct, kicked in very aggressively and vehemently, and I wanted kids. Then 4 or 5 months ago, we moved to Pittsburgh and felt really good here, felt ready to conceive, and it quickly happened. We were overjoyed to find we were pregnant. I started recording little videos about the changes that were happening in my body.
Day one of being a pregnant woman. Man, I have been ravenous and eating crazy amounts. Right now, I'm eating dumplings with Greek yogurt and ketchup. It's that weird being a pregnant woman. Today, I was craving for lunch a grilled cheese and tomato soup. I've never had this craving.
So I was trying to put on more weight, and I think my body knew my body was craving more fatty foods. So I was trying to, put on some cushion for baby. So I was really excited. The other thing is I'm a very bad secret keeper, and I wanted to let all my friends and family know. But my husband, who's a doctor, said that it's not customary to share the news until after your first trimester. So I waited, and then 11 weeks, I was feeling great. We were going to have a family reunion in Pittsburgh. My brother was going to fly from London. My parents were going to fly from California. And I wanted that to be the time. I was like, we're so cool. We're just a few days away from the first trimester completing. And we're not going to have another opportunity where everybody's together in person. And it was my parents' anniversary. So I wanted to give them this gift of a grandchild. So I made these custom mugs that had these little Asian hearts on them. And it said, Best Akong Ama, which means grandma and grandpa in Chinese, on it, and I gave it to them for their anniversary present, and they were super surprised. I'd never seen my dad so happy and shocked, and he kept asking me, really, you're joking me? So it was a very joyful moment. And then the whole family, we went to an OB-GYN appointment together the next day, saw the heartbeat. It was a tiny little flicker, and my heart definitely thumped a little bit. And the doctor said everything was well, we're really healthy, and they expect no problems. So we went home happy, and that was on a Monday. By Friday evening, I was feeling a little bit of cramping, a little uncomfortable in my belly. And we were at a Bible study, and I told everybody I'm going to sit out on this one, not feeling great. But by the time we got home at around 9:30, it got a little worse, so my husband gave me a couple painkillers, and that helped. At that time also, I started bleeding, and that's worrisome because a little blood is okay, I read, but this was more than 2 tablespoons, and that's not a good sign. So we agreed that at that hour, it was really late, there wasn't much anybody could do about it, so we would make an appointment first thing in the morning. We went to bed that night, tossing and turning, and at around 2:30, I woke up to go to the bathroom, and as I was peeing, I felt something drop. It felt sort of like if during your period you have a sudden strong flow. It felt like that, but obviously I wasn't on my period, and so at that moment, in the middle of the night, I knew something bad had gone down. In the morning, I told my husband, and he gave me a big hug and held me and said everything was going to be okay. I didn't find out until later when I was reading his journal that he held me close so that I wouldn't see his face, because he knew right then that this was bad, that we'd probably lost it, and he didn't want me to see him crying. But we went that day to the ultrasound, emergency ultrasound, and we did a first trans-abdominal ultrasound. That's the kind you see in movies. Get a little gel and the wand is moved over your belly. And the tech just made mundane comments about my uterine lining being really nice and clean and pointing out the things she saw, but she wasn't saying the critical thing that we were there for. So I had to ask her, I was like, well, is there a baby? Do you see a heartbeat? And of course I could also see the screen that there was no baby, but in that situation you're hoping, because I'm not a medical person, maybe I don't know how to interpret that ultrasound, but she said no baby. And she said, but we want to get a better look, we want to do a transvaginal ultrasound. So she asked me to go to the bathroom and get undressed. And while in that bathroom, I let it out. I just started weeping because I knew everything. I knew at that moment that it was lost cause, and everything after this was just a confirmation. So I started crying in that bathroom by myself, came out with the gown, and she did the transvaginal ultrasound. You put a wand inside. Again, she made those mundane comments, left ovary looking really healthy, right ovary, uterine lining nice and clean. But again, nothing close to what we were looking for. And that was it. She never said anything. So at the end I was like, okay, well, no baby? And she confirmed it when I asked. And that was it. The doctor didn't come see us. She was in a different room. You know, the tech only had to do it and bring the imaging to her, to the doctor. We didn't even get to see the doctor. And then we, for the next few days, just busied ourselves with different projects. And we, of course, had to tell our friends and family. And that was devastating. That was very difficult to do. But I wouldn't have done it any other way. I have no regrets about sharing the news when I did with my friends and family, because they were like a strong net that kept us and held us. And the next day, actually, after the miscarriage, one of my friends made a Chinese herbal chicken soup, which she said in this kind of, it's important for a woman to replenish their health, for their health. I didn't know there were specific foods that in Eastern medicine is recommended. I had no idea, but she did, because she'd gone through several miscarriages, and so she was able to encourage me in a way that no one else could. Actually, she wrote a verse from the Bible on a tea canister that really stuck with me. Even though I'd read the Bible several times before, this verse had never stood out to me before. It says, "Is anything too marvelous for Jehovah? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life." This is Genesis 18:14, and that just filled me with hope. She was full of hope, even after her multiple experiences, so she filled me with hope. And my sister-in-law gave us a beautiful orchid, and one of my friends who was pregnant as well and just had her baby actually, and I had hoped that our babies would be friends and grow up together. When she found out, she ordered to our home some Korean fried chicken, and it was the best fried chicken I've ever had. I was crying eating that chicken. It was so good. And so I really appreciated the love and support. So if you guys are watching this, you know who you are. Thank you for your love. It really kept us and held us. And that was one way, that avenue of support from which we received help. Another was journaling. I think that helped me a lot. The next day I wrote down what I had experienced, and I'll read it now. It's called 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. Somehow knowing that fact, we're still willing to try. Somehow knowing that fact, we are still shocked when we become one of the 1 in 5. Somehow, knowing that fact does not prepare us at all for the overwhelming fear that rises from our belly to our throat when we stare at the ultrasound with bated breath, while the doctor, with maddening calm detachment, pokes about our belly with a wand. She says she will need a better view. She needs us to undress and poke around inside. She doesn't say no baby, she can't be sure. But alone in that bathroom, we shed our clothes and our hopes and our tears. We come back out, we sit back down, one foot in each stirrup. She pokes her wand and looks around, making benign commentary about the left ovary, the right ovary, the nice thin uterine lining, a perfectly healthy uterus. But she doesn't say what you're wishing her to say. "Where's my baby?" you want to scream. You're not blind. You can see there's no heartbeat. But you convince yourself you're dumb. You don't know how to interpret an ultrasound. Then the appointment is over and you finally ask, "So, no baby?" "No baby. I'm sorry." She gives you some tissue and shows you out. You don't cry as you walk out of the hospital. You think, hey, you're doing pretty darn good. You get to your car and sit in a moment of silence. You're not prepared at all. When the biggest, fattest, ugliest tears tumble out in a torrential downpour and sounds from your throat that you've never heard rumble out. In that moment, it doesn't matter that you're 1 in 5, or that you've never met your baby, or that it was only the size of a prune, hardly a baby yet. It wouldn't make sense to have any attachment to it, much less love it. You've never seen it, touched it, held it. How could you have loved it? But you did, and you finally realize you've lost your baby. But what you also didn't know was that hidden among those friends and family were so many of the 1 in 5s. They share your pain, divide your grief. They make you herbal soup and jujube tea. They remind you of forgotten words in the book of life. Is there anything too marvelous for Jehovah? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life. They share with you their stories of pain, loss, and healing. Stories reserved only for 1 in 5s. Stories retrieved from their depths, summoned by the depth of your own pain. Their stories are a balm to you, soothing, strengthening, encouraging. You won't see the world the same again, but the world won't see you're different. That having had a 1 in 5 and having been an almost mama, you've joined the ranks of women who bear this special story buried in their depth, and trudge on with life as usual the next day, until another 1 in 5 comes along and summons the story from your depth. Then it's your turn to pour out the balm on a wound that opens every 1 in 5. I should have prepared a tissue for myself, but there was almost a Dorian Gray effect. Of course, Dorian Gray is, a horror story and has negative connotations, but what I mean by that is all of my negative feelings was transferred onto paper in much the same way in the book where Dorian Gray's his experiences were transferred onto the portrait. So for me, it was a very, very helpful and therapeutic exercise to do. I would highly recommend anybody who's struggling with grief to try journaling, because we're really channels, and channels have an inflow and an outflow, and whenever sometimes we take in a lot and we don't flow it out. So that's what I'm doing with the journaling, and even with this video. I want to be able to share my story, but also keep it as a document for my future self, as a reminder. And so, yeah, I hope that this contributes to the dialogue, helps somebody out there as they're going through a difficult situation to know that there are others that are going through the same, and not to lose hope, because I certainly haven't, and my friends and family certainly haven't, and we're certainly going to try again at the time of life. I also hope that for people who haven't gone through this experience, maybe this video and my sharing my experience would help you be able to empathize and sympathize with somebody that's going through it. Just because it's 1 in 5, just because because it happens prevalently doesn't make it any less painful and traumatic. There's lots of ways that you can support your friends or family who are going through this. So yeah, I hope this helps. Bye-bye. I forgot there was one more thing I wanted to say, which is that if you haven't had a miscarriage because you've been blessed with beautiful babies, I hope you would treasure and love every moment you have with them. Bye-bye.